Everyone who ever achieved something rare did not have more time than you do. This is not motivational fiction. This is not a feel-good lie told by people trying to sell you something. It is simple, observable fact. They had the same 24 hours, the same Sunday nights where Monday was creeping closer, the same 9 a.m. obligations and 11 p.m. exhaustion, and 3 a.m. moments of doubt when sleep wouldn't come. Yet somehow, their hours became different. Not more generous with time, but architecturally different. The structure of how they moved through a day, week, month was fundamentally different from how most people move through theirs. And this difference, this small, invisible architectural shift, is what created the gulf between where they ended up and where everyone else did. Consider Marcus. He is a marketing director at a mid-sized tech company, early 40s, intelligent, driven, 2 kids at home. He works the same hours as his peers. He sits in the same meetings. He has the same calendar chaos. He goes to the same grocery store on Saturday mornings and scrolls through his phone in the same waiting rooms. By every external measure, Marcus has the same time budget as everyone around him. But somewhere around year 5 of his career, something shifted in how he thought about his hours, not how he managed them, how he thought about them. Most people, including Marcus for most of his life, operate from a single buried assumption about time. They believe the problem is scarcity, not enough hours in the day, not enough days in the week, too much to do, never enough time to do it. This belief is so foundational, so invisible, that most people never even notice they are operating inside it. They wake up already behind. They move through their day already playing catch-up. They look at what they want to build or become or achieve and immediately feel that familiar weight, the weight of not having enough time. But here is what almost nobody realizes about this, that belief is not the diagnosis, it is the symptom. The real diagnosis comes earlier, much earlier. It is this: most people have never decided what time actually means to them. They have never asked themselves what a single hour is actually worth. They have not drawn a line between hours that matter and hours that do not. So every hour feels the same. Every demand on their time feels equally urgent. Every opportunity feels like it deserves their attention. And when you believe every hour is the same and every request is equally important, of course you feel like you do not have enough time. Of course you feel behind. You would have to be. The successful people Marcus eventually surrounded himself with, not the ones who just made more money, but the ones who built something that lasted, who created options for themselves, who genuinely seemed to move through life with agency rather than panic, had made a different decision entirely. They had decided that their time was not infinite, but that it was precious. And more importantly, they had decided what made it precious. They had gone the extra step that most people skip. They had defined, consciously or not, what an hour was worth to them personally, what it could become if invested wisely, what it would cost them if squandered. And this definition changed everything about how they moved through their day. Think about that for a moment. When Marcus finally started paying attention to how the people he respected actually spent their hours, he noticed something strange. They were not working more than he was, but they were not working randomly either. There was an architecture to it, a structure, almost like they had drawn invisible lines through their calendar and decided what went where. They protected certain hours. They surrendered others without guilt. They said no to things he would have said yes to automatically. They said yes to things he would have ignored completely. And the efficiency everyone attributed to them, they just seemed to get so much done, was not actually efficiency at all. It was clarity. They knew what an hour was for. They knew what would make it count. They had made a choice about how to spend their time that went deeper than just managing a schedule. They had made a choice about what time meant. Most people approach their hours the way they approach money, with no investment philosophy. You earn it, you spend it, you run out, you panic, you try to squeeze more hours out of somewhere. You feel guilty when you waste them. You blame external circumstances when there are not enough. You never step back far enough to ask the fundamental question, what would it look like to invest this time instead of simply spending it? What would change if you stopped treating hours like an expense account and started treating them like capital? The people who eventually build something significant have all made this shift, not because they are special, not because they have more discipline or better genetics or access to some time hack that regular people do not know about, but because they stopped believing they had a time problem and started believing they had a clarity problem. And clarity, unlike time, is something you can actually control. What comes next changes how most people think about this entirely, because the moment you stop trying to find more time and start trying to clarify what your time is for, everything becomes different. Not easier, different. There is a fundamental difference in how two categories of people think about their hours. And this difference is not about time management. It is not about productivity systems or apps or morning routines. It is about a mental model so basic, so foundational, that most people never even recognize they are using one at all. On one side are people who think of their time like money they are spending. They have a fixed budget, 24 hours a day, and they are constantly managing that budget. They make withdrawals, they allocate resources, they try to be efficient with their spending. They feel guilty when they overspend in one category and underspend in another. They live in a perpetual state of trade-off. If I spend 3 hours here, I cannot spend 3 hours there. The math is zero-sum, the thinking is scarcity-based, and the entire framework is built on the idea that they are trying to make their fixed budget go as far as possible. On the other side are people who think of their time like capital they are investing. These people ask a completely different question about their hours. Not, how do I spend this efficiently? But, what does this hour become? Not, how much time do I have left? But what is the return on this time investment? They are not managing a budget. They are building a portfolio. And the mental framework is entirely different because the underlying question is entirely different. Marcus did not notice this distinction until he was having coffee with David, a director at the same company who had taken a different trajectory. Same company, same starting position 5 years earlier, same general intelligence and work ethic. But David's career had moved in a noticeably different direction, not just a better title or higher pay, though that was true, but a different kind of visibility, different opportunities showing up, different options appearing that nobody had offered to Marcus. Marcus asked him directly, "How do you get so much done? And more than that, how do you seem to care less about being busy but somehow end up ahead?" David paused. Then he said something that seemed simple, but stuck with Marcus for months afterward. "I stopped thinking about whether I had time for something and started thinking about what time I was giving up to do it." This is the shift. When you think of time as something you are spending, you think in terms of yes or no. Do I have time for this meeting? Do I have time to help this person? Do I have time to learn this skill? It is a binary decision. And because you always seem to have some time, some pocket of availability, the default answer is often yes. You can fit it in, you can squeeze it in, you can move things around. So you do. You say yes. And then you wonder why you feel so scattered at the end of the day. When you think of time as something you are investing, the decision structure changes entirely. You still ask if you have time, but you ask a second question immediately after. What am I not doing if I do this? What return do I expect from this investment? If I give this hour to this task, what becomes possible? If I give this hour to this person, what am I building? And perhaps most importantly, is this the best possible use of capital I have available right now? The difference is subtle, but it reorganizes everything. Ask yourself honestly, have you ever caught yourself saying yes to something, only to realize later that saying yes meant you had to say no to something you actually valued more? Most people do this constantly, and they do it because they are operating from a spending mindset. They are asking if they have time. They are not asking what time is actually worth in context. David explained it differently. He said that for years he had tried every productivity system. He had learned about time blocking and deep work and batching similar tasks, and all of those things helped. But the real shift came when he stopped trying to manage time and started thinking about time as an investment vehicle, not theoretically, practically. He started asking about every single hour the way an investor asks about capital deployment. This hour I'm about to give to a meeting. What am I getting back? Connection? Information that matters to my decisions? A relationship that will lead somewhere? Or am I going to sit in a room and pretend to listen while email piles up in another tab? This question changes the answer. This hour I am about to give to learning. Am I learning something that increases my value in ways that matter to my future, or am I consuming content to feel like I am being productive? There is a difference, a big one. This hour I'm about to give to helping someone. Are they helping themselves, or are they dependent on me for solving problems they should solve themselves? Am I building their capacity or substituting for it? When Marcus started asking these questions, he noticed something remarkable. The number of hours he had available did not change, but his sense of what was possible within those hours changed dramatically, because he was no longer dividing his time equally among everything that asked for it. He was allocating capital strategically, and this meant that some hours became worth significantly more than others. Not in the sense that he was cramming more into them, but in the sense that they were generating actual returns. He was building something, moving towards something, creating options instead of just managing obligations. The hours were the same. The investment strategy was different. But here is what makes this thinking pattern difficult for most people to adopt. It requires saying no, not eventually, immediately. It requires identifying what you are not going to invest in so that you can invest strategically in what you are. And most people have never been taught to do this. They have been taught to be accommodating, to be flexible, to say yes and figure it out, to not leave opportunities on the table. The investment mindset requires the opposite. It requires that you leave almost everything on the table so that you can actually pick up the few things that matter. What comes next is why this feels so uncomfortable for so many people, and why the people who master it gain such an extraordinary advantage. There is a moment that comes for almost everyone who starts thinking about time differently. It usually arrives quietly, in a moment of genuine confusion. You have cleared your calendar. You have protected a block of time for something important. You have done everything right, and yet when you sit down to do the work, something feels wrong. The time is there, but something else is missing. That something is attention. Marcus discovered this about 6 months into his shift toward investment thinking. He had started saying no to meetings. He had blocked out his mornings for work that actually mattered. Strategy, planning, thinking about problems instead of just reacting to them. He was doing everything right. And yet he would sit down at 9 a.m. with 3 uninterrupted hours ahead of him and find that those 3 hours felt scattered. His mind was somewhere else. His attention was fractured. He would look at the clock at 10:15 and realize he had only actually worked for maybe 20 minutes. The rest had been him sitting there thinking about the email he needed to send, the conversation he needed to have, the thing his manager had said in yesterday's meeting that was bothering him. The time was available. His attention was not. This is the distinction that separates people who just manage their time better from people who genuinely become more productive in ways that compound over years. It is not about having time. It is about having attention, and attention is not the same as time. You can have 24 hours and zero attention. You can have 3 hours and complete attention. One is vastly more valuable than the other. In fact, the number of hours is almost meaningless without the attention to go with it. Most people have never made this distinction. They think if they just get more time, if they just protect their calendar, if they just block out hours, they will be able to do better work. But they are confusing the container with the contents. They are confusing availability with presence. And when they sit down with all the time in the world and discover they cannot focus, they blame themselves. They assume they lack discipline. They think they need better time management. They do not realize that they have a different problem entirely. The problem is that attention in modern life has become the actual scarce resource, not time. Attention. Think about where your attention actually goes during a normal day. You wake up and check your phone. Your attention is immediately pulled in a dozen directions before you have even had coffee. You get to work and there are messages waiting, notifications, requests. Each one is pulling your attention. You try to focus on something important and your phone buzzes, your attention fragments. You move to the next task and your mind is still partially in the last task. You leave work and scroll through your phone while your kids talk to you. Your attention is divided. By the end of the day, you have given your attention to everything except the people and work that actually matter to you. And yet, you feel like you should have been able to do more. But here is what almost nobody realizes about attention in the modern context. It is not that your attention is weak or your discipline is low. It is that your attention is being actively stolen. Design systems are built specifically to capture it. Apps are engineered to be addictive. Notifications are timed to interrupt you at the moments when you are most vulnerable to being pulled away. The entire digital ecosystem is optimized to fragment your attention because fractured attention is profitable. So when David told Marcus that he had moved from thinking about time to thinking about attention, Marcus initially thought it was the same thing. It was not. David explained that he had to protect his attention the way a business protects its capital. Not just protect his time, protect his attention, which meant something entirely different. It meant that he did not just block out hours. He created conditions where his attention could actually land. He closed his email during certain blocks. Not because the email would disappear, but because having it available was splitting his attention, even if he was not reading it. He silenced his phone, not because he was rude, but because the possibility of interruption was eroding his capacity to go deep. He worked in places where he was not surrounded by people who might interrupt him. He had conversations about his attention the way some people have conversations about their budget. When a colleague would ask him to attend a meeting, he would say, "I cannot give my full attention to that right now. Can we reschedule for when I can?" Rather than showing up and being physically present but mentally absent. This small shift from protecting time to protecting attention created a cascade of changes. The work he did during those protected blocks became exponentially better, not because he was working longer, because his attention was undivided. The quality went up, the speed went up, the creative output went up, the number of hours stayed relatively the same. What changed was what happened inside those hours. Most people never make this distinction because no one teaches it. You are taught to be time efficient. You are not taught to be attention efficient. Yet attention efficiency is what determines whether your investment of time actually generates a return. You can have all the time in the world. If your attention is fragmented, the return is almost nothing. You can have limited time. If your attention is complete, the return multiplies. This realization led Marcus to a question that changed how he thought about almost everything he did. It was not just about protecting blocks of time. It was about asking, where does my attention actually go? And is that where it should go? What comes next reveals the framework that separates people who ask that question from people who actually do something about it. David was not being mystical when he talked about protecting attention. He was being practical. And when Marcus asked him to explain specifically how he organized his thinking, David walked him through something so simple that Marcus almost missed its significance. It was a framework for sorting hours, not sorting tasks, sorting the actual quality and intention behind how the hours were spent. David said there are 3 categories of hours that exist in every person's week, and most people never distinguish between them. They just move through hours in whatever order they arrive. But successful people, he explained, have learned to see these 3 categories clearly. And once you can see them, you can decide how to allocate your limited attention across them. The first category is what David called investment hours. These are hours where you are building something, learning a skill that compounds over time, creating work that will generate value in the future, developing a relationship that opens doors, having a conversation that shifts how someone thinks about something. These are hours that create returns that exceed the time you put in. You give an hour and you get back 2 hours worth of value. You give 10 hours and you build something that saves you 50 hours down the line. The return is not immediate necessarily, but it is real, and it compounds. Marcus realized immediately that these were the rarest hours in his week. He could count them. Monday morning, he had blocked for strategy work on a project that would position the department differently. That was investment time. Wednesday afternoon, he had scheduled time to learn a skill he had been avoiding. That was investment time. Most other hours were not investment hours at all. The second category David called maintenance hours. These are necessary. They have to exist. You cannot avoid them. They are the meetings that actually need to happen, the email that actually needs to be answered, the obligations that keep things functioning. They do not generate additional return. You put in an hour and you get back an hour's worth of value, maybe a little less. But they are the price of keeping the engine running. Without them, everything collapses. But they do not build anything new. They prevent loss. Marcus could identify these easily too. Most of his hours were maintenance hours, status updates, team meetings that could have been emails, performance reviews, administrative work, the constant low-level management of people and projects and systems that kept things moving but did not move things forward. The third category is what David called drift hours. These are hours that you lose without intention. You did not plan to spend them. They just happened. You opened your email and suddenly 30 minutes have passed. You sat down at your computer to do something and looked up and it was time for lunch, and you cannot quite remember what you actually accomplished. You meant to work on something important, and instead you handled small, urgent things and handled them until the day was gone. These hours disappear. You do not get value from them. You do not maintain things with them. You just lose them. And the terrible part is that they feel like work the entire time they are happening. You go home exhausted from drift hours, even though you have nothing to show for them. Ask yourself honestly, what percentage of your week is actually drift hours? For most people, it is staggering. 40%, 50%, sometimes more. Hours that feel like work while they are happening. Hours that evaporate. Hours where your attention was present, but your intention was absent. David said that when he started categorizing his hours this way, it was initially depressing. He realized that he had almost no investment hours. His calendar was maybe 60% maintenance hours and 40% drift hours. No wonder he felt like he was not building anything. He was not. He was maintaining and drifting. So he made a simple decision. He did not try to create more hours. He tried to convert drift hours into investment hours. And when that was not possible, he converted some maintenance hours into investment hours. And here is what happened. His investment hours went from maybe 3 or 4 per week to 15 or 16. Not because he worked more, but because he was deliberate about what happened inside his hours. Where drift had been happening, he now created conditions for intention. Where maintenance had been consuming everything, he started asking which maintenance was actually necessary and which was just habitual. The returns were not subtle. Within 6 months, his position shifted. Within a year, he was being positioned for opportunities that Marcus was not even seeing. Not because David was suddenly working 80-hour weeks, but because those 15 or 16 investment hours per week were compounds. They were building something, and that something was becoming visible, valuable, rare. Marcus realized that this framework was the missing piece. He had started protecting his time, he had started protecting his attention, but he had not been intentional about what happened inside that protected space. He was just assuming that because the time was blocked and his attention was available, something valuable would happen. But his attention, while available, was still sometimes drifting. He was still spending block time on maintenance tasks he could have done in different pockets. He was not being strategic about which hours became investment hours and which remained maintenance hours. So he started trying the same experiment. He mapped his week into these 3 categories. He was horrified at what he found, but he was also relieved, because now he could see clearly where the problem actually was. It was not that he did not have time. It was that almost none of his time was organized as investment. What comes next is the decision that separates people who see this framework from people who actually transform their lives with it. Once Marcus could see that his calendar was mostly maintenance and drift, he faced a choice that most people never actually make. He could try to add more investment hours on top of everything else. Work earlier, work later. Add another hour or 2 to the day through pure force of will. This is what most ambitious people do when they realize their time is not organized well. They do not reorganize, they just try harder. But David had done something different. He had looked at his calendar and asked a much harder question. What am I doing that I should not be doing at all? This question is where most people stop, because the answer requires saying no, not eventually, not politely, actually declining things that other people are counting on you to do. And for most people, saying no feels dangerous. It feels selfish. It feels like you are putting your own priorities above other people's needs. It feels like the thing you should do only if you are really confident you will not regret it later. But David explained something that reframed this entirely for Marcus. He said that every time you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. It is not optional. It is not theoretical. It is absolute. You do not have the time to do everything. So when you say yes to a request without asking yourself what you are saying no to, you are making that decision unconsciously. You are letting someone else decide what matters more. And most of the time, you are saying no to the things that matter most to you. This is the clarity that comes from saying no. It is not deprivation, it is honesty. Marcus started experimenting with this. There was a recurring meeting on his calendar that he had been attending for 3 years. It was a cross-functional committee that was supposed to increase collaboration. In 3 years, he could not remember a single decision that had changed anything. But he attended because it seemed important, because his manager attended, because saying no seemed like it might be noticed negatively. He looked at his investment hours and realized that this meeting was consuming time that could become investment time. So he did something he had never done before. He asked his manager if he could skip the meeting. Not forever, but as a trial. He explained that he wanted to test whether his presence was actually necessary. He explained that if no one noticed, then his time was genuinely not needed. And if someone did notice, then they could discuss what his actual value was at that meeting. No one noticed. He reclaimed 2 hours a week, 2 hours that had been drift adjacent, sitting in a meeting pretending to pay attention while his mind was elsewhere. 2 hours that could become investment hours, and when he actually did the work to convert those 2 hours into investment time, instead of just adding them to his chaos, something shifted. He started a small project on the side. Something he had been thinking about for years, but never had time for. He spent those 2 hours on it every week, Nothing glamorous, just consistent work on something he actually cared about building. Within 3 months, that side work led to a conversation with someone in another department. Within 6 months, it had generated an opportunity that would not have existed otherwise. The 2 hours per week of investment time had actually compounded into something real. But here is what makes this so difficult for most people. Saying no requires being willing to disappoint someone. It requires accepting that the person who asked will feel rejected or inconvenienced. And most people have been raised to avoid this feeling at almost any cost. We say yes to manage other people's emotions. We say yes to prevent conflict. We say yes to seem accommodating and cooperative and like we are not difficult to work with. Think about that for a moment. We are organizing our time around other people's comfort instead of organizing it around what we actually want to build. And we do this so consistently that we stop even noticing we are doing it. We think we are being accommodating. We are actually being controlled. David had learned to say no differently, not rudely, not without explanation, but clearly. When someone asked him to take on a project, he did not immediately check his calendar to see if he could squeeze it in. He checked his investment hours. He looked at what he was building, and he asked himself, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? And if the answer was that he was saying no to something that mattered more to him, he said no. Not maybe, not eventually, no. And something remarkable happened. He did not become less respected. He became more respected because people started to realize that when David said yes, he actually meant it. He was not saying yes and then half delivering because he was overwhelmed. He was saying yes to things that mattered to him, and he was doing those things well. The scarcity of his yes made it more valuable. Marcus tried this approach tentatively at first. There was a volunteer opportunity he had been guilt-tripped into. A project that sounded good, but that he did not actually care about. A mentor relationship where he was supposed to help someone, but where the person was not actually committed to being helped. All of these things had seemed like the right thing to do, but they were not investment hours. They were not even maintenance hours. They were drift hours that he had voluntarily taken on because saying no felt uncomfortable. He started saying no, not to everything, but to the things that were not actually his to own. And as he did, something clarified. His calendar became quieter, not empty, but organized around intention. And in that space, something became possible that had not been possible before. He could actually think, he could actually plan, he could actually decide what to build instead of just reacting to what was asked of him. The people who appeared to respect him less when he said no were people whose respect he had not actually earned anyway. They had simply grown accustomed to his availability. Once they adjusted, new relationships formed with people who valued clarity and intentionality more than compliance. His social capital did not decrease. It redistributed toward people who respected how he spent his time. But the real shift came when Marcus realized that saying no was not just tactical. It was not just a way to reclaim hours. It was the foundation of everything that comes next. Because you cannot become a time investor if you are not willing to invest selectively. And you cannot invest selectively if you are not willing to decline most opportunities. The clarity that comes from saying no is not just about hours. It is about who you are becoming and what you are building. What comes next is why that protection becomes necessary and what happens to people who do not maintain it. There is a moment that comes for almost everyone who starts saying no and protecting their investment hours. It usually arrives about 4 weeks in. Things feel good, your calendar is cleaner, your attention is sharper. You are actually getting work done on the things that matter. And then someone asks you to do something, not a big ask, a small favor, a quick meeting. Just this one time. It will only take an hour. It is for a good cause. It is for someone you like. It is hard to say no, so you say yes. And suddenly you realize that saying no once does not protect you from having to say no again. The protection only works if it is active, continuous, built into how you actually move through the world, not just into your intentions. David warned Marcus about this. He said that protecting investment hours is not a decision you make once. It is a practice you maintain, and if you stop maintaining it, entropy takes over immediately. The people around you are not malicious. They are not trying to steal your time, but they have needs, requests, projects, opportunities, and if your boundary is not clear and not defended, those requests will gradually consume your protected time, not all at once, gradually. Until one day you look at your calendar and realize that your investment hours have been eroded away and you are back to maintenance and drift. So David had developed specific behaviors, not rigid rules, but consistent practices that defended his capital without requiring him to say no in every moment. The first was what he called the meeting default. For years he had said yes to every meeting request because meetings seemed like they should be optional items that could be declined only if you had a genuinely good reason. But he had inverted that logic. Now his default was no. If someone asked him to a meeting, the answer was no unless there was a specific reason his presence was necessary. Not important, necessary, different word, much higher bar. This sounds simple, but it requires a shift in identity. You have to stop thinking of yourself as someone who is accommodating and flexible and always available. You have to start thinking of yourself as someone who is protective of their time and selective about where their attention goes. And that identity shift is uncomfortable because it feels like you are becoming difficult, unhelpful, not a team player. But David explained that this was the opposite of what actually happened. When he stopped saying yes to every meeting, the meetings that remained became more productive because he was actually present in them. His attention was not divided. The people running the meetings realized they needed to be more disciplined about who was actually necessary. The meetings got shorter, had clearer agendas, actually accomplished things. By saying no to most meetings, he had improved the quality of the meetings he attended. The second behavior was what Marcus started calling time blocking with teeth. He had tried time blocking before. He would block out hours on his calendar and then consistently allow interruptions to pull him away. Someone would slack him. He would respond. Someone would ask a quick question. He would answer. Someone would need something urgent. He would help. And by the end of the day, his protected time was not protected at all. It just looked protected in the calendar. David's approach was different. He did not just block the time. He made it impossible to be interrupted during that time. He closed his email. He put his phone in another room. He worked in a place where people did not know to find him. He told his team explicitly that between 9 a.m. and noon, he was unavailable unless there was an actual emergency. And he defined what an emergency actually meant. A system down, a customer crisis, a safety issue, not a question, not a clarification, not a request that could wait. This sounds harsh, but it is actually the opposite. It is clarity. People know exactly when they can and cannot reach him. They know that if they interrupt during block time, it is because they genuinely need him. So they protect that time for him too. They stop interrupting. They batch their questions. They respect the boundary because the boundary is clear. Marcus implemented this and noticed something unexpected. He did not actually get many interruptions. People had just grown accustomed to his availability. Once they realized he was not available, they figured out solutions without him. Or they waited. Or they asked someone else who was available, and the organization kept running. Somehow it always does. The third behavior was what David called the transition ritual, between different types of time, moving from maintenance to investment, from meetings to deep work, from email to creation. David would do something small to mark the transition. He would close his laptop. He would step outside for 30 seconds. He would write down what he was about to do. small things, but they signaled to his brain that attention was shifting, that intention was changing, that this hour was different from the last hour. Most people do not do this. They just keep going. They move from one meeting to the next without pause. They move from email to project work without acknowledging the shift. And their attention does not shift with them. So even though they have allocated the time differently, their brain is still operating in the previous mode. The transition ritual forces that shift to actually happen. The fourth behavior was harder to describe, but more important than the others. David called it ruthless completion. When something was in his investment hours, he finished it or he did not start it. He did not start projects and then leave them half-done to pick up later. He did not create multiple half-finished things that were constantly pulling his attention from elsewhere. He either finished the work or he said no to starting it. This sounds inefficient, but it is actually liberating, because it means that his mind is not holding dozens of open loops. He is not constantly context switching. He is actually completing things, and completion creates the psychological foundation for everything that comes next. Ask yourself honestly, how many things are you working on right now that you have not finished? How many projects are sitting in a waiting state while you move to something else? Most people have dozens, and every single one is pulling their attention. They do not show up on your calendar, but they are there in your mind, and they are eroding your ability to focus on anything else. David had learned to protect his time not just with calendar blocks and clear no answers, but with behaviors that made it genuinely difficult to break the boundary. He had made it so that interrupting him required actual effort. He had made completion a requirement so that his mind was not fragmented by incomplete work. He had created transition rituals so that his attention could actually shift. He had redefined what meetings were worth his time so that he was not spending his investment hours sitting in rooms. And he had done all of this not because he was special or had some superhuman discipline, but because he had decided that his time was capital. And you do not leave capital undefended. You do not let it get stolen in small increments by things that seem urgent but are not actually important. What comes next reveals what happens when you actually maintain this kind of protection over years instead of weeks. There is a mathematical principle that governs almost everything in the world, but it is one that most people never actually internalize when it comes to their time. It is called compounding, and it works like this. Small, consistent changes create exponential results over time. A 1% improvement every single day does not create 1% more value over a year. It creates 37 times more value. The math is not linear, it is exponential. But the human brain is linear. We think in terms of what we can see immediately. We do not feel the power of small changes that take months or years to become visible. This is why people abandon time investment practices after a few weeks. They expect to see dramatic results immediately. They block their calendar. They protect their hours. They say no to distractions. And for the first week, it feels great. But by week 3, nothing obvious has changed. They still have the same job, the same salary, the same life. So they abandon the practice. They go back to how things were. They do not realize that the compounding has not started yet. The returns are invisible. And by abandoning the practice, they guarantee that the compounding never happens at all. But if you stay with it, something remarkable happens. Not all at once, but across months and years, the small differences compound into canyons. Marcus experienced this in real time. He had been protecting his investment hours and practicing the defensive behaviors for about 3 months when he had a conversation that shifted his perspective entirely. He was talking with someone from another department who asked him how he always seemed to have time to help people while also moving his own work forward. Marcus almost laughed because his instinct was that he was actually busier now, more intense, less flexible. But as he thought about it, he realized the opposite was true. He had more capacity now, not less, and he had better options. and he was getting asked to do more interesting things. Why? Because of compounding. In those first 3 months, he had invested maybe 15 hours per week in his own development and projects, small projects, things that interested him but that were not part of his job description, things that had no immediate payoff, things that most people would see as a distraction from actual work. But he had been consistent. 15 hours every week for 12 weeks. That was 180 hours of focused, intentional work on things that he wanted to build. 180 hours is the equivalent of 4.5 full-time work weeks. That is a lot of time. And because his attention had been protected and his work had been completed rather than half done, that time had actually generated something. A small project had become a case study. A side skill had become visible. A network connection had become a real relationship. Nothing earth-shattering, but real. Think about that for a moment. Most of his colleagues had spent those same 12 weeks saying yes to requests, attending meetings, responding to email, handling urgent things. They had been busy, very busy, but they had not actually built anything. And because they had not built anything, they had nothing to show. They were in the same position they had been in 3 months earlier. Marcus had invested 180 hours. His colleagues had spent 180 hours. Completely different words, completely different outcomes. But here is what makes compounding insidious. The gap was still not that visible at 3 months. It was noticeable to Marcus. He could feel it, but no one else could see it yet. The compounding had begun, but it had not yet created results that were undeniable. This is the danger zone where most people quit, because you have to maintain the practice for long enough that the compounding becomes visible to other people too. And that takes patience. And patience is what most ambitious people do not have. So Marcus kept going, not because he could see the future, but because he had committed to the practice itself, not to the outcomes. He had decided that investment hours were what successful people did, so he became someone who did that. 6 months in, things were different. The small project had led to a conversation with a senior leader who was interested in the approach. The skill he had developed had come up in a meeting with a client. The network he had built included people who thought about problems the way he did. His reputation had shifted slightly, not dramatically, but noticeably. He was becoming known for something, for having thought deeply about something, for having built something worth paying attention to. A year in, the compounding was undeniable. He had been approached about a role on a new initiative that required exactly the skills and perspective he had developed during his investment hours. He had been introduced to 3 people who became genuine collaborators. He had started consulting on something that generated revenue outside his job. Nothing he had planned, just the natural result of investing consistently in something he cared about. But here is what matters more than the external results. His internal reality had changed. He no longer felt behind. He no longer felt like he was just managing chaos. He had clarity about what he was building and why. He had options that most of his peers did not have. He had become someone whose time was worth protecting because he was actually using it to build something. The compounding is not just about time, it is about identity. When you invest your hours consistently, you start to see yourself differently. You are not just someone who is busy, you are someone who is building something. You are not just managing your calendar. You are architecting your life, and that identity shift changes everything else that follows. Most people never get to experience this because they do not stay with the practice long enough. They see the gap opening up between themselves and the people who do, and instead of closing that gap, they become resentful. They tell themselves that those people are just lucky, or that they have more time somehow, or that they do not have as many obligations. Anything except the truth. They made different choices about how to allocate their hours, and they made those choices consistently enough that the compounding took over. What comes next is the identity shift itself. because knowing that time compounds is not the same as being someone who invests their time. There is a leap that has to happen, and most people never make it. There is a difference between doing something and being someone, and most people spend their entire lives confused about this distinction. They try tactics, they implement systems, they practice behaviors, and then they wonder why the change never lasts. It does not last because they are trying to do something without becoming someone. They are trying to be a time investor while still being someone who thinks like a time spender. And those two identities cannot coexist. One has to win. Marcus experienced this shift, and he described it as the moment when things stopped being effortful. He had been protecting his investment hours for about 8 months. He had been saying no. He had been defending his time. He had built transition rituals. He had maintained ruthless completion. And all of it had been somewhat hard. It required conscious effort. Every time someone asked him to do something, he had to stop and think. Is this an investment? Is this maintenance? Can I afford this? Every time he wanted to say yes, he had to actively remind himself of his commitment. Every time someone interrupted, he had to hold the boundary even though it felt rude. And then one day he realized that it was not hard anymore. He did not notice this gradually. He noticed it suddenly. He was in a meeting and someone asked if he could take on an additional project. The old Marcus would have felt that familiar pull. The desire to be helpful, the discomfort of saying no, the instinct to check his calendar and see if he could squeeze it in. But the new Marcus felt something different. He felt clarity. He did not have to check his calendar. He already knew. He was investing his hours in something else. The answer was no. Not reluctantly, not with guilt, simply no. And in that moment, he realized that he was no longer practicing time investment. He was being a time investor. It had become automatic. It was not something he did. It was who he was. This is the identity shift that most people never make. And it is the shift that separates people who maintain their practice from people who eventually abandon it and go back to their old patterns. Because once time investment becomes your identity, you do not have to force it anymore. You do not have to remember to do it. You do not have to overcome the discomfort of saying no. You just do it naturally because that is who you are. The way this happens is not through motivation. It is not through willpower. It is through repeated action until the action becomes so consistent that it reorganizes how you think about yourself. This is how all identity change actually works. You do not think your way into a new identity and then act it. You act your way into a new identity and then the thinking follows. You behave consistently in a new way, and after enough time, your brain reorganizes itself around that behavior. That is when it becomes automatic. That is when you become someone new. But here is what makes this so difficult. Most people try to change their identity without changing their behavior. They think about being more productive, and then they do not actually change how they spend their hours. They think about being a leader, and then they do not actually change how they interact with people. They think about being different, and then they wonder why they stay the same. Identity follows behavior, not the other way around. Ask yourself honestly, what identity are you reinforcing every single day through how you spend your hours? If you are spending your hours saying yes to everything, you are reinforcing the identity of someone who is accommodating and flexible and never quite in control. If you are spending your hours in meetings and email and reactive work, you are reinforcing the identity of someone who manages chaos but does not create anything. If you are spending your hours protecting investment time and building something, you are reinforcing the identity of someone who has agency, who is deliberate, who is worth listening to. David had explained this to Marcus early on. He said that the hardest part of becoming a time investor is not the tactics. It is not learning to say no or building a time-blocking system or defending your calendar. Those are easy. The hard part is the internal story you tell yourself about who you are and what you deserve. Most people have a story that they are not the kind of person who can be selective about their time. They are not important enough to have boundaries. They are not senior enough to say no. They are not confident enough to protect their investment hours. And they tell themselves this story so consistently that it becomes true. It becomes their identity, and their behavior follows that identity perfectly. But the moment you act differently, the moment you protect your hours and say no and invest in building something, you start to create a new story. And if you keep acting that way, if you stay consistent with the new behavior long enough, eventually you believe the new story. You stop being someone who wishes they had time to invest. You become someone who does invest their time. And at that point, the behavior is no longer effortful. It is just what you do. This is why Marcus could turn down the project without guilt, not because he had become heartless or unhelpful, but because he had reorganized his internal story. He was no longer someone who said yes to everything and felt good about being accommodating. He was someone who said yes to things that mattered to him and did them extraordinarily well. That was his identity now, and his behavior reflected it perfectly. The shift is subtle, but it is everything, because once you are operating from a different identity, everything else changes. The hours you protect feel natural, not selfish. The no you deliver is clear, not apologetic. The investments you make feel purposeful, not indulgent. And the person you are becoming is fundamentally different from the person you were. But becoming that person requires letting go of the old identity. And that is harder than any tactic, because the old identity is comfortable. It is familiar. Even if it does not serve you, it is what you know. Letting it go means admitting that you have been organizing your life around the wrong values. It means accepting that the person you thought you were is not who you want to be. And for most people, that admission is too costly. So they keep their old identity even though it costs them everything. The people who make the shift are the ones who get tired of the cost. They realize that being accommodating has made them invisible, that being flexible has made them powerless, that being available has made them unremarkable. And they decide that the discomfort of becoming someone new is worth it, because staying who they are is more painful. What comes next is the choice you have to make to complete this transformation. Every choice has a cost. This is the part of becoming a time investor that most people never think about until they are actually in the middle of the transformation. They see the benefits. They see that David has options and clarity and builds something meaningful. They see that Marcus is becoming someone who matters in his organization. They see the upside, and then they start the practice, and they very quickly discover that there is a downside too, and they have to decide if the trade is worth it. Marcus discovered this about 4 months into his shift. He had said no to something that his manager had asked him to do. It was a project that did not align with his investment hours. It was maintenance work that someone else could handle. So he declined. Professionally, clearly, without guilt. But his manager did not like it. His manager expected that when he asked, the answer was yes, and now the answer was no. And for a few weeks, Marcus worried that this decision would cost him, that saying no would be seen as not being a team player, that his reputation would suffer. It did not, but the fear was real. And the cost was that he had to tolerate the discomfort of his manager's disappointment. He had to be okay with someone not getting what they wanted from him. He had to accept that maintaining a boundary meant accepting some friction. This is the first trade. You have to give up being liked by everyone. When you are someone who says yes to everything, you are liked. People appreciate your flexibility. They value your willingness to help. They see you as easy to work with, and there is real comfort in that. The comfort of being needed. The comfort of being seen as helpful. The comfort of not creating friction But that comfort comes at a cost. It costs you your time. It costs you your agency. It costs you the ability to build something meaningful. Most people are willing to make that trade because the downside is invisible. You do not feel like you are sacrificing anything in the moment. You just feel like you are being a good person. It is only years later, when you look back and realize you never built anything, that you understand what the trade actually cost you. But when you become someone who is selective about their time, you have to give up that comfort. You will disappoint people. You will frustrate people. You will create friction. And you have to be okay with that. Not unkind about it, but okay with it. Because the alternative is to keep organizing your life around other people's comfort instead of your own clarity. The second trade is subtler. You have to give up the illusion that you can do everything. This sounds obvious, but it is not. Most ambitious people operate from a deep belief that they are capable of doing almost anything if they just work hard enough. And they are. They probably are, but capability is not the same as available time. You can be capable of doing something and still not have time to do it well. And when you become a time investor, you have to accept this. You have to accept that there are things you are capable of doing that you will never do. That there are opportunities you could pursue that you will pass on. That there are talents you have that you will leave undeveloped. Because you cannot do everything. No one can. And pretending you can is just another way of never investing in anything fully. Most people never make peace with this. They keep trying to do everything. They say yes to projects and learning and relationships and opportunities, and nothing gets their full attention. Everything stays half-finished. Nothing compounds. The trade Marcus had to make was to accept that choosing investment hours meant not choosing other things. It meant looking at his capabilities and saying, I can do these other things, but I'm not going to, because I'm going to do this thing instead. And I am going to do it in a way that actually matters. The third trade is the hardest. You have to give up the safety of staying small. When you are someone who is busy but not building anything, you are not threatening to anyone. You are not making anyone uncomfortable. You are managing chaos, and people appreciate that. You are reliable and consistent, and you do not make waves. There is safety in that, real safety. Because if you are not building anything that matters, then nothing you do can fail in a way that matters. You can stay small and comfortable and known, but when you start investing your time in something meaningful, you become vulnerable. You are building something. That something can fail. You are developing a perspective or a skill or a project. People will evaluate it, judge it, criticize it. You are stepping into visibility. And visibility means risk. It means that people can see you, and if they can see you, they can also reject you. Think about that for a moment. Most people choose invisibility over risk. They choose to stay unknown rather than to be known and rejected. They choose to do small, safe things rather than to do big things that might fail. And they call this being realistic, being pragmatic, protecting themselves. But what they are actually doing is choosing safety over significance, and the cost of that choice compounds too. Over years, over decades, the cumulative cost of never stepping into visibility is that you have nothing to show for your life except time that passed. Marcus had to make this trade. He had to accept that building something, even something small, meant putting it out there. It meant letting people see it and judge it. It meant risking that someone would say it was not good enough. And he had to decide that the risk was worth it, that being small and safe was more painful than being visible and potentially judged. But here is what he discovered. The people who judge harshly are people he would not have wanted in his life anyway. The people who matter actually appreciate seeing someone build something meaningful. And the visibility that felt terrifying at first became liberating, because he was no longer hiding, he was not performing, he was just building, and that is freedom. The fourth trade is this. You have to give up urgency as a way of life. When everything is urgent, nothing is important. But when you become a time investor, you have to accept that most things that feel urgent are not actually important. And you have to let them go. You have to watch email pile up and not respond immediately. You have to see requests come in and let them wait. You have to become someone who is not reactive. And that feels wrong at first. It feels like you are not doing your job, like you are being irresponsible. But what you are actually doing is reclaiming your agency. You are deciding what is important instead of letting importance be decided for you by whoever sends the most emails or asks the loudest. And that decision is worth the discomfort of letting urgent things wait a little longer. These trades are real. Being a time investor costs you something. It costs you comfort. It costs you the illusion of capability. It costs you safety. It costs you urgency. And most people look at that cost and decide it is too high. They decide they would rather stay busy than be intentional. They would rather be liked than be significant. They would rather be safe than be visible. But the people who make the trades discover something that makes every bit of it worth it. They discover that the cost was never as high as they thought, and the return is far higher than they imagined. What comes next is how to actually build this into your life, when your life is already full and chaotic and real. The moment Marcus decided to become a time investor, he had a thought that almost stopped him entirely. It was a thought most people have when they understand what this requires. He thought, this sounds good in theory, but my life is not theory. My life is chaos. I have kids. I have unpredictable work demands. I have obligations I cannot control. I have emergencies that show up without warning. How do I protect investment hours when my life does not cooperate? This is the moment where most people quit. Not because the ideas are bad, but because the ideas seem impossible to implement in actual messy reality. And so they tell themselves they will start later, when things calm down, when they have more control, when their life is more stable, and they never start at all. But David told Marcus something that changed this. He said that the people who actually build something significant do not wait for their lives to calm down. Because life never calms down. There is always chaos. There is always urgency. There is always something that requires immediate attention. The people who invest their time are the ones who build the practice despite the chaos, not after it disappears. So Marcus did something that took courage. He committed to the practice in his actual life, not a perfect version of his life, not a simplified version. His actual life with kids and unpredictable work and all of it. And here is what he discovered. The practice does not require perfect conditions. It requires commitment to the principle even when conditions are imperfect. His approach was this. He decided that he would protect investment hours even if he could only protect a few. He could not do 15 hours per week immediately. His life did not allow it, but he could do 5. 5 hours per week that were truly protected. 5 hours where he would not check email, would not take meetings, would not respond to messages. 5 hours that belonged to him and to the thing he was building. Not somehow, deliberately. So he found them, not in perfect uninterrupted blocks, but in pieces that added up. An hour before work started, before everyone woke up. An hour over lunch when he stepped away. 2 hours on Saturday morning. 1 hour on Wednesday evening after the kids were asleep. 5 hours total, not ideal, but real, and protected with the same intensity as David protected his 15 hours. And he treated those 5 hours like capital. If something emerged during the week that was legitimately urgent, something that required immediate attention, he would handle it. But he would not let a single hour of those 5 get stolen by something that was only pretending to be urgent. He would not let them erode. He would not let them disappear into maintenance work. This is the key insight. You do not need a perfect amount of investment time. You need protected investment time. You need hours that are actually yours, even if there are only a few of them. Because even a few hours, when they are truly protected and truly invested, will compound. Within 3 months of protecting 5 hours per week, Marcus had something tangible: a project outline, a skill developed, a network connection, something that would not have existed if those 5 hours had disappeared into the chaos like most of his time did. Within 6 months, those 5 hours had generated conversations that led to opportunities. Within a year, those 5 hours per week had completely shifted his trajectory. But here is what matters more. He had proven to himself that it was possible. He had proven that you do not need perfect conditions to invest your time. You need commitment. You need clarity about what those hours are for. You need to defend them. But you do not need your life to become suddenly calm and orderly. The architecture he built looked like this. First, he identified his 5 hours, not theoretically, specifically. Tuesday, 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Wednesday, 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Friday, 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Saturday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Those were his investment hours. They were on his calendar. They were not flexible. If something came up, the answer was usually no. Truly urgent situations were rare. Second, he protected those hours behaviorally. He closed his email during those times. His phone was in another room. He worked in a space where people could not find him. He had told his family and his team that these were his protected hours. Not negotiable, not flexible, protected. Third, he completed things during those hours. He did not start projects and leave them hanging. He worked on one thing until it reached a natural stopping point, or until the hour was done. This kept his mind from fragmenting across multiple incomplete projects. This kept the compounding effect alive. Fourth, he tracked what came from those hours, not obsessively, but he paid attention. He documented what he learned. He noted what connections happened. He saw what emerged, and seeing the return reinforced the commitment. It made the protection feel less like sacrifice and more like investment, because he could see the return. Ask yourself honestly, what would your life look like if you had 5 protected hours per week for the next year? Not 5 hours of time management, 5 hours of actually building something, 5 hours where your attention was yours. What would you create? What would you learn? What connections would form? Most people do not ask this question because they think 5 hours is too small to matter. But 5 hours per week is 260 hours per year. That is more than 6 full work weeks of focused time. That is enough to build something real. The second part of Marcus's architecture was learning to live with the incompleteness of everything else. Not everything could be perfect. His house was messier. His email was often not caught up. Some things took longer to get to. Some requests went unanswered. Some projects were half done. And he had to be okay with that, because the alternative was to keep everything somewhat done and nothing actually invested. He chose to have some chaos in exchange for some clarity, and the clarity was worth it. The third part was accepting that this was going to be a long game. He was not going to see massive transformation in 3 months. He was not going to build a business or become famous or completely change his life. He was just going to build something small and real and his, and he was going to do it consistently, and he was going to wait for the compounding to work. Most people cannot do this. They want rapid transformation. They want to feel like something is happening immediately, and when it does not, they stop. Marcus had to train himself to be motivated by the practice itself, not by the results. To trust that if he stayed consistent with the practice, the results would follow. This is the foundation of actually becoming a time investor in real life. Not a perfect plan, not a simplified life, not waiting for the right conditions, but a commitment to protect some hours, actually invest them, and trust the compounding process, even when you cannot see where it is going yet. What comes next is not another tactic or another framework. It is the perspective that makes all of this actually work. There is something that shifts in you the moment you stop believing that your time problem is about scarcity and start believing that it is about choice. It is not a dramatic shift. No one else will notice it happening, but you will feel it. You will feel it in the moment you say no without apologizing. You will feel it when you protect an hour and actually use it for something that matters to you. You will feel it when you look at your week and realize that you are not just managing chaos, you are building something inside the chaos. This feeling is what separates people who try time management tactics from people who actually become time investors. It is the moment when you realize that your hours have never been the problem. Your relationship to your hours has been the problem. And the moment you change that relationship, everything changes. Marcus is still working at the same company. He still has kids and unpredictable obligations and all the real constraints that made him wonder if any of this was possible. But his life looks different now. Not because he works more, but because he works differently. Because he has clarity about what his hours are for, because he protects that clarity even when protecting it is uncomfortable, because he has learned to see the difference between time spent and time invested, and because he stayed consistent long enough that the compounding took over. You do not need to be special to do this. You do not need more time. You do not need perfect conditions. You do not need discipline that most people do not have. You need to decide that your hours belong to you, that they are capital worth protecting, that the person you are becoming is worth the investment, and then you need to make that decision again tomorrow and the day after that. Not because it gets easier, but because the return compounds. The life you want to build is not waiting for the right moment. It is waiting for you to invest in it, starting with the hours you have right now, even if there are only a few of them, even if your life is messy, even if you cannot see where it is going. The compounding does not require perfect conditions, it only requires consistency. Your hours are not a problem to solve. They are capital to invest, and you are the only one who can decide what they become.